Welcome to this NAEC seminar devoted to people analytics in the era of big data. As I think, I'm sure you all noticed over the past month with all the NAEC seminars, I think there's a clear trend that is emerging, which is that new approaches to economic challenges requires new approaches to data. In the sense that there are new sources of data that we need to tap into, maybe new methods, new data products that we need to build in order to be more relevant, maybe sometimes also more timely in terms of the freshness of the data, to support the policy analysis, to support the policy recommendation, and in the end, to support policy making and policy decision in countries. In order to do so, we need to source new data and build partnerships with the actors of the digital economy. Today we have Jean-Paul Isson, who is with us, Vice President at Monster.com, international speaker, best-selling author, and he will tell us, in fact, mainly the result of his latest publication, and Global Vice President for Business Intelligence and Predictive Analytics at Monster.com. Monster.com, as you know, is the leading platform in the area of job seeking and recruitment since 20 years. And so in that sense, I think the discussion today will be extremely interesting in understanding how we can engage as the policy-making ecosystem with actors like Jean-Paul and the digital pure player that he represents in order to develop better policies and new approaches to economic challenges. We have, I think, 40 minutes of presentation by Jean-Paul that will be followed by questions and answers. I would invite those of you who are in the back seat to maybe move to the front, given that there are empty seats, if you wish. And that said, without further ado, over to you, Jean-Paul.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here. And thanks the OECD to invite me to discuss people analytics, discuss how big data will be changing some of the policy or the way we live, I would say, the way we think. It's different. And more importantly, I think it really challenges the conventional wisdom. So today I have, I think, 35 slides to share with you. That's a lot. I'll make sure that I remind you what slides are very important. The presentation itself is really about people analytics, and I'm happy to be here to share the, I would say, the result or the findings of my latest book, People Analytics in the Era of Big Data. What is people analytics? Why people analytics today? And what are the benefits? And also, in the end, we'll have some example of companies that are really leveraging people analytics in their business and to create more value. So, I just want to. I'm a statistician by training, so I like doing some survey, very quick survey. How many of you heard about big data? Just raise your hand. Big data. Almost everyone. And how many of you heard about business analytics and people analytics? Okay, this is a conference for everyone. So today we're going through an overview of big data. Just I know you guys heard about big data. Just to tell you, give you a refresh for some or an overview for those who didn't have a chance to look into big data, and then people analytics. Why people analytics? What is people analytics, and what are the benefits? And the 7 pillars of people analytics success. How we can really, any organization can leverage people analytics to drive performance or to drive some policies, and then we'll end up with some frontline story. So I like reading books and also writing books, articles. So in preparation for my first book, I came across, when big data was really at the early age, I came across some quotes about big data or about data that I found very interesting. The first one is from this lady here. She said something that I found very powerful regarding the data. Data is the new currency of digital world. this is so powerful. I mean, it's so true, the new oil of internet. And the next quote that I personally, this is the genesis of my personal love of big data. And you understand why. So it's from a friend of mine, Tom Davenport, Harvard Business Review. He said, data scientist is the sexiest job of the 21st century. Data scientist, the sexiest job of the 21st century. And this is the genesis of my love of big data. It started before. Why? Because I'm a dad. I have 2 kids, and my 2 kids, they are girls, 2 daughters, 11-year-olds and 3-year-olds. Now I'm just picturing myself, 11-year-old Roxanne, 3 or 4 years from now, screaming, go change yourself. No, you can go out with that. It's too short. So, because she would like to be sexy as any teenager. So what I'm trying to brainwash my daughter to become a data scientist. I started when she was 8. Why? Because if she become a data scientist, she will be sexy not only in Montreal, not only in Canada, but she will be worldwide sexy. So this is my personal love of big data. And I do recall myself 20 years ago when I was studying mathematics, people were not looking at us saying, oh, you guys, you're sexy because you're studying mathematics. It was like, those geeks, don't talk to them. And today, we are the sexiest job in the 21st century. This goes a long way with Hal Varian, who is the economist chef at Google, and he's also a professor at MIT, statistician. Same line of thinking, sexiest job in the next 10 years. Why? Because people would like businesses, organizations, would like to understand the 360 degree of their business. And to be able to transform the data into actionable intelligence, we need statistician or data analyst. Now, some statistic. From the dawn of the civilization up until 2003, humankind, we generated 5 exabytes of data. 5 exabytes. 1 exabyte is 1 followed by 18 0. Or just to put things in perspective, if every human being is receiving 147 copies of New York Times, so that's 1 exabyte of data. As we speak today, the same amount of data, 5 exabytes, is being generated every 2 days. Every 2 days. Why? Because this is what happened. This is what will happen in the next 60 seconds. In the next minute, on Google, on Facebook, on YouTube, Google will have more than 2 million searches that will be performed. On Facebook, we'll have 700,000 content shared in the next 60 seconds. Amazon will sell for $203,000. And on Monster side, we have 3,500 job views. So as you can see, data never sleeps. It's always pumping, growing. And the good news today is that we can capture that data that before we're not able to do. So why big data? And what is big data? I was speaking in Vegas last month, and I was defining what is big data, and somebody raised a hand. JP, why are we talking about big data today? So why are we talking about big data today? 3 major reasons. Number 1 is the cost. The cost has dropped. In 1994, to buy 1 gigabyte space was $11,000. As we speak today, 1 gigabyte space is less than 1 cent. The second reason why we're talking about big data today is we've seen an increase of interactive devices, sensors. With our mobile phone, we can track, record everything that we see, everything that we touch, everything that we feel. So we can store that. And the good news is when we store that information, it's not residing in a single room. It's connected to an IP address, so it could be shared. And the third reason why we're talking about big data today is that we have tools and infrastructure that help us to harness, to analyze the data and create some value with that. When you hear people talk about data, they will talk about the volume that is huge, just cover how, the volume of data that was created in 60 seconds. And the variety. different format. It could be text, voice, chat, numbers. So we have that. There's no limitation anymore. And then the third one is the velocity. Data is pumping in 24/7. The speed at which data has been getting into our system. And then the most important V for me that I really believe is the value. Because big or little data, if there's no value, it's just simple noise. And our goal is to find signal from this bunch of noise that is big data. So, some overview, this is from IDC. Last year, total data balloon 7.9 zettabytes. And 4 years from now will be 35. If you can go back in 2010, 1.2 zettabyte, 7.9 last year, and 35. And just for you guys, a zettabyte is if you take an iPad 32 gigabyte, you build a wall from Montreal to Paris, 61 feet high, back and forth. This is 1 zettabyte. You have an iPad and you try to build that wall from Montreal to Paris, back and forth. So, for human capital, because this is really our goal, what do we do? How do we leverage that data? So for human capital, the data is coming from business that generate the data, whether it's what they are selling, whether it's the management of their customers, the labor market data, like data that OECD will produce or other statistical bureau. We have data from what I call HRIS, that is Human Resource Information System, where you have payroll, you have the training, you have evaluation, all the data related to the workforce. And then a big chunk of data is coming from the publicly available data or open data. This is a gold mine of insight when you want to understand some human behavior, because the work of work has changed and a lot of people are leaving a lot of data, useful data, on the internet that can help to understand their behavior and even to predict their behavior. So big data comes with challenges, but also opportunities. Only 0.5% of the data is being analyzed today, 0.5%. The 80% of the data is unstructured, meaning it's text, video, or voice. It's not numerics, it's just unstructured. And 90% of the data that we have today has been created over the last 2 years. 90%. And the data will grow by 800% in the next 3 years. The challenges regarding data is security and also finding the talent, being able to analyze the data. And that's called data scientist. That's the sexiest job and also the hardest to fill position globally. I have the opportunity to travel the world, and it's the same issue. Finding data scientists is very, very difficult. So those are the challenges, security, resources that will help your organization to harness the data. Now, I like polling, so once again, you guys statistician, most of you and not. So what's the most important term in the word big data? Is that big? Is that data? Or both? Big data. Who will vote for A? Just raise your hand. I just want to take the poll. Good. We have one person. B. 3. And C. Okay, majority of people. I'm so sorry. None of those response. All right. Big data doesn't make any sense. What you're looking for is to create the value from your data. Small, and I even call that smart data. So big data without value is noise. What you're looking for is to find some signal from the amount of data that you have available. So most of the time when I have this presentation about big data, people, they're just like, from where we start. Mostly in Europe, there's this big brother behind the scene watching everything that I will do. But I can tell you that big data is really changing the way the world operates. Just an example, the US election in 2012, my cousin was involved as a volunteer for Obama, and I had the opportunity to work with the chief data scientist of Obama, and one of the reasons why he won, he was reelected, is, of course, the voice of American people, but the big data make a difference. They were able to leverage, analyze behavior in swing state and optimize the spend on those states. And we know the result. And it's still happening there. So it's not something that is only for business. Now it's migrating to politics, to sport, and even now to human resource. That's why I'm sharing with you today people analytics. So from the people analytics side, how can we leverage big data? So to that, three questions. Number one, why people analytics? Number two, what is people analytics? And number three, the benefit. So in the why people analytics, it's really here. The world of work has changed. Gone as the day where we have to come with our world perfect resume saying, I'm looking for a job, please hire me, or meeting with, no, everything is happening. Most of the things are happening online, social media. And the second thing is also now that we see why we moving into people analytics is that personal branding. People can build up their own brands and say who they are without talking to you, make themselves available online, and if you're looking for them, you can find them. The second reason why we're talking about big data is really people analytics, and big data in people analytics is the optimization of the supply and demand equation. And I think for an organization like OECD, I think this is very important for you guys. I think to have that data to better understand, better build a model to forecast supply and demand at the country level, at the state level, even at the city level. The third reason why we're talking about people analytics and why people analytics is really the 4 pillars, because the world now has migrated into the 4 pillars that I call big data, social, mobile, and cloud. When you combine all that, you have the result where old method, old approaches won't work. We need to live in the real world of the 4 pillars of mobile, big data, cloud, and social. And for most organizations in the private sector and even in the public sector, I think the workforce represents 60 to 70% of the first line item of expenses. So we need to do better than just intuition or instinct or gut feel. That's why people analytics come into play, because we need to inject analytics to make better decisions. So this is my last polling question. After that, you're done. According to you guys, and the last vote here, who vote for A? We have 4, 5, 6. Who vote for B? This is my generation. Who vote for C? And Z is the latest one after Gen Y. Okay. So, (2005). 5 years ago. Yeah. And by 2020, there will be more than 50%. This is in North America, in Europe, everywhere. So having millennials accounting for more than half of the workforce, it's imperative for every organization, every country to adapt their policy, to change that. Even from my perspective as a manager, I have a team where I have someone 54-year-old, and I have 25 years old, and I have 40-year-olds. So dealing with this kind of multi-generation could be a challenge. We need to understand the need and preferences of everyone. Mostly when we look at the millennial who will be taking over by 2020, where on majority of baby boomers will retire, we have to understand how we will manage those people, how we will driving performance based upon the new generation that has different expectations and different needs. So with that, we really jump into people analytics. So what is people analytics now? People analytics, for me, it's talent management or workforce management that start with workforce questions. Who should we hire? Who are our employees that are at risk of leaving? Who are the talent that we should develop to stay in business? Where are we having extra supply and low demand, or vice versa? So when we have that business question in mind, that is workforce analytic question, then we integrate external and internal data. And then I know Eurocup is going, and if you recall, these guys here, as Paul the Octopus during the World Cup in South Africa was able to predict what country will win. So our goal here is to make the prediction of what will happen with this behavior here. And if we can do that, we take action. So we take action across the entire organization. And then because we are helping managers, countries, and states to drive decision, we are accountable. So we have to measure. We track the result. Did we help them? How good was the model that we use? So this is people analytic. It's really analytic that starts with that workforce management question. We gather the data, we make the prediction, and we then take action and track. This is the second slide, most important slide of my talk today to keep. So the next one here is really how you create value from all the data that we discuss, and to make sure you can get some actionable workforce intelligence. So if you have big data or small data or little data or smart data, your goal is really, first and foremost, this is like workforce data, external data, labor market data. So if you put everything together, it gives you something that could be big data, as we call. But what you're trying to achieve with data, big, little, smart, or smart, is to address three questions. Another slide important here is what happened, and what is happening now, and why. What will happen in the future, and what should we do? Those are the three questions. Whether you're doing analytic or building people analytic for business, for people, for organization, those are the questions that we try to answer. So with the first question is what happened in the past, we create what's usually called KPIs and dashboards. So in people analytic, we have to do our HR dashboard, HR scorecard, understand what's happened with our workforce. And then what is happening now is where we build labor market segmentation, seeker segmentation, market research, the voice of customer. We even do a lot of semantic analysis of resume, semantic analysis of any data available in the market. And then we have what will happen in the future is where we create predictive models and forecasting. So from what happened in the past, what we're getting is simple information. And then when we try to do what is happening now and why is knowledge. When we get what will happen and what we should do, like most of the things that you guys here will do, recommendation to countries and so forth, this is what will happen. And this is what we should be doing, is where intelligence is coming from. So our goal in people analytics is to take the data, big or little, and to transform that into actionable workforce intelligence that organization, company, state, they can work open. The third slide to keep today, because you've been so nice answering my questions. So the benefit of that. Doing people analytic, we have a 360-degree understanding of talent performance. We can optimize our overall supply and demand equation. We can also compete and win as an organization. And then we can understand or anticipate employee at risk of leaving or wrong behavior, attract, acquire, or develop talent. This is so important. Like the biggest bank in Wall Street, JP Morgan Chase, invested $837 million in people analytics. Because you're probably aware of that, since 2008, JP Morgan paid $36 billion in litigation, compliance and litigation. So for them to invest almost $1 billion, 837 million, just imagine if they're able to get back $1 billion. The payback, they already have a profit. So this is serious business. While organizations like JP Morgan Chase investing a lot here, and we'll see in the upcoming slide how other great companies like Google, they've been leveraging people analytic. So as now we know why people analytic, what is people analytic, the key benefit, and the next session is really how do you migrate from traditional analytic that you're doing today to people analytics? And what do you need to achieve that migration? The simplest way to really do the migration from business analytic to people analytic, I think, is just to switch the word from business. We talk about customer, and you replace that word with employee or talent. So it's what I'm doing here. I switch customer, I put talent. We can do exact same thing. Customer acquisition, talent acquisition. Customer development, talent development. Customer retention, talent retention. And the well-being and so forth, it's really similar. So it's really people analytic. Folks in HR and human capital, they just have to think like marketers. And the changes that are happening today, it's similar to what happened to marketing back in 1990. Before 1990, before the World Wide Web, with the internet, marketers were creative people. They didn't really believe in the data. They were like, yes, I'm running this campaign, this ad. I'm sure it's working. It's great, it's working. And then when internet came in 1990 with the World Wide Web, where we have the click stream, we can store the click stream. So if you're saying that your campaign is working, you have to show the conversion. You have to show the traffic. So marketing gradually migrate from being creative to marketing analytic because they became more accountable. So same thing happening now with human capital and HR. Getting that 360 degree of the life cycle of the talent, but the new, what I will say here is the injection of analytic at every single stage of the talent. Whether you're planning your workforce, you're sourcing talent, you're acquiring talent, you're developing talent, getting them on board, or you're managing the performance, retaining your talent, and the well-being. So this is what I really cover in my latest book that was published. This is here for those who didn't have a chance to see. Published in April this year. So my goal in the book was to showcase how we can migrate from marketing to people analytic, just following marketing pace, injecting, instead of having customer, have employee analytic at every stage. And then we'll get to the 7 pillars of people analytic. And to how do you inject that analytic? You can use what simple acronym that I have here is called IMPACT. So you keep in mind what is your business question, you have your data, you provide meaning to the data, you communicate the meaning, and then you track the outcome. So if you take this impact and you apply that to the life cycle of talent that we cover here, you get the 7 pillars of people analytics here. And this is what we'll be talking about. So what is that? It's just injecting. This is the last slide that's really important for the talk today. Injecting analytics at every stage of your talent life cycle. Workforce planning, talent sourcing analytics, talent acquisition, onboarding and engaging your talent, retaining and driving performance, and then the last one is wellness and well-being of your talent. So in the next slide here, just share with you some findings from my research, talking to more than 340 companies and business leaders about their frontline story leveraging people analytics. I started the workforce planning with this quote here from Abraham Lincoln. He said something that I think is very powerful when you talk about planning. Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. And you know what those two guys have together, Lincoln and the ants, it's planning. You know exactly what to do, what you have to do, what you'll have to do in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, or in some industry, 25 years. This is workforce planning analytics. Analytics comes into play because you leverage models that help you to anticipate talent that you'll need to drive performance within the next 3 years, 5 years, or 25 years. And it's where the supply and demand equation is also important. In here, you just only build that supply and demand, but you also build forecast model of the supply and demand. Company that have leveraged this, Dow Chemical, they were able to plan for every role for the 40,000 employees they have on title, location, category, and all the retirement. And even a Montreal-based company, Metropolitan Transportation company, has leveraged workforce planning because they have drivers like I think 5 years from now, they will have more than 60% who will retire. How will they replace all those people? So who you need to drive business performance in the future. And this is where planning comes into play. The next one here, second pillar, is sourcing. How you find talent. And today, as I mentioned, the world of work has changed. Everything is digitalized. You don't look for talent not only talking word of mouth. You look for talent leveraging social media, leveraging online job board like Monster or other job board, leveraging community or alumni. So that world of work has been changed. Now the sourcing analytic, what is that? It's just leveraging optimization model to say, if I want to hire data scientists, should I use social media source, or I'm better off going with a job board or with a referral or with alumni? So it's similar to what guys in marketing attribution model, where the dollars, who should I give the last click? Same thing happening here. For sourcing, analytic helps you to optimize the spend on sourcing. So the next one here is acquisition. Talent acquisition, hiring people. And once again, here people analytics really comes into play, because hiring, as Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, said, the most important thing that you do, you hire bad people, they can destroy your organization. Not only they're bad, but they can have a negative impact on your existing results. So analytics here helps in 2 ways. Number one, when you build your question for interviews, the type of question that you're asking. Number two, the number of questions and the number of interviews. You probably witnessed some organization where they have lengthy list of questions, psychometric questions that you have to fill out, and then you will endless number of interviews. Company like Google, they were able to run analytics to compare questions that candidate answer when they were interviewed versus their performance at work. Optimization, one more time. So Google realized that some questions were just useless. Questions that were asked to candidates was, for instance, how many gas stations do we have in New York? Or how many golf balls can you fit in an aircraft? So those questions was just like useless. And to get a job at Google before was like you would go through 9 interviews. And they realized that up until 4, beyond 4 is useless. Analytic, once again, people analytic comes into play. Save a lot of money, save a lot of time. Now, the second value of analytic or people analytic in the hiring process in the selection. If you look at companies like Walmart, they hire 500,000 people a year because their turnover rate is 40%. They lose like 40% of every 100 hires. So just figure if you have to spend on training $3,000, 40% on 500,000, that's a lot of money. So what analytics can help to do and has helped to do is to score every applicant that when they end up with a high score, meaning if they are hired, they will be top performer and they will be loyal. So that saves a lot of money to the business and also create a great energy for the organization, bringing in people who have great cultural fit. So I'm sorry about my patriotism here, but this is onboarding. And, onboarding when you come into a new organization, you need really like those great-looking kids here welcoming you, feel like home, and explaining you how the organization works and what you should be doing. So engagement also here, you can leverage people analytics to measure all the engagement all your engagement program, how they're impacting the work that people once hired they will be doing. Are they more performant if they go through engagement process A or B? And some organizations like Wells Fargo Bank were able to leverage big data analytics to track every single engagement process that employee goes through and personalize the onboarding of that employee to have better retention and better time to performance. The next one here is performance. So talent performance is about evaluation. We all have annual evaluation. Now with the new world of work, we realize that performance is really important to track, but on a regular basis less than on a yearly basis. So company now, they're doing that. Companies such as GE used to track once a year and score all the employee on decile and saying everyone the bottom decile is let go. They're changing that because the work of work has changed and they need more data and more frequent feedback. So the last one here is really the talent retention. And talent retention is very critical today because we are in a global economy, and in a global economy where Google, if they're looking for a data scientist and that you have a PhD guys here in Paris graduate, they will come and get that guy. There's no limit anymore. So if you have great people, how do you make sure that you understand their needs and not be surprised hearing them say, oh, I'm leaving? So people analytics here help to understand that and predict who from your workforce is at risk of leaving and what you should do to save or keep that talent. The last one, not the least, is employee well-being. This is something that a lot of organizations, sometimes they will forget. But I'm a big believer that customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction will drive customer satisfaction. So if you have your employee that, or your workforce that is happy, engaged, it will reflect on your bottom line. And organization that I have the opportunity to speak to like Johnson & Johnson, they were able to see the impact and increase of 1% engagement of their workforce, their employee, on the bottom line. That was more than $150,000. So this is happening now. And the challenge for people in HR and overall human capital manager is the conventional wisdom. It's like, how come data can really predict that, can explain that? And the answer is yes, it could, and it's happening, it's helping. And the goal is not really to say that people analytics will replace all human beings. The goal here is it will help, is a support. So it's something that they should be able to leverage. And this is like the use of people analytic, predictive analytic in organization. As you can see, level 1, this is where people create report. Most of the people, they're creating report. Only 4%, this is last year, this number doubled this year. 8% of organization are leveraging predictive model to drive people performance and to drive people-related decision. And those companies are doing so on S&P 500. They outperform their peers by 30% on the stock price. So it pays off. The last slide here is really kind of a personal slide. I started personal and I ended up personal. Here is when I started working for Monster 11 years ago, I was hired to build up the team and from the ground up. So I was working as a data miner in wireless industry, building all kind of model, predictive model for churn acquisition. And I got this job at Monster to become a director at that time, and I was so excited. And at the same time, my first daughter was born, so I have new job, dad for the first time of my life. So I started with my daughter. So my daughter was born. We, as any new parent, we were very happy. A couple of weeks, she was sitting up. We enjoy that moment, like little baby now, she's sitting up. And then a couple of months later, she was crawling, come on, throwing tools. Every time that she evolves, we enjoy that. And all of a sudden, I was coming back from work, was in January. In January in Montreal, it's pretty cold. So she was holding the table, and she left the table, start walking. And guess now, Daddy, let's go, rollerblading. My wife and I, we enjoy every single moment of that evolution. And in people analytics or in business analytics, baby steps is the way to go, is important. So when I joined Monster, what I did is, number one, understand the business. So first and foremost, I've been told you're a director. I was so excited. I say, wow, promotion, director. And when I came in, you're a director of one person. And guess how many? It was myself. So I have to build that team from the ground up and I have to showcase, I have to make my case to the organization. So asking the question, like how many customers we have, it sounds easy, but wasn't an easy one because you can get 4 people, 4 different answers because they look at things on their single window on their day-to-day. So standardizing the information was important when we talk about the data. I started creating dashboard, explaining what happened in the past, and then we moved to advanced analytics, what will happen, and some innovation project to really change the way we were doing business and looking at innovation in the way that I think you guys, you heard there's thousands of books about innovation, but one definition that I found very, very simple and wise is from the guy who invented TED Conference, who created TED Conference, Richard Saul-Wurman. When he was asked about innovation, very wise man, he said something I found powerful. He said innovation for him is addition or subtraction. Simple as that. You add or you subtract something to your product, to your service, to make it better. So I found that in analytics, it's something that we can do because we had 3 questions. What happened? What is happening now and why it is happening? What will happen in the future? So if you inject innovation there saying, what happened? What can I add or subtract to what happened to make it better? What is happening now? What can I add or subtract? And what will happen in the future? What should I add or subtract to make it better? So you will find area of innovation in your people analytics. The knowledge maturity model, baby steps counts in people analytics, block by block to get to your way. So in closing, today, if you want to have a great human capital manager, you need someone with art, science, but combination of both. Combination of both, intuition and intelligence from the data to make the better decision. And once again, people analytics won't replace human being, and I'm really 100% sure, even in artificial intelligence, we are probably maybe 5 or 10 years to get computer think like man, human being. And in people analytics, my view is that it's a support to the decision. You can make better decisions when you leverage it. So this is what I have to share with you today. If you want to attract, to acquire, develop talent, go with people analytics. You will find useful support to the decision. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Paul, for this fascinating presentation and insights. Before opening to the floor, I just had one question, is what the techniques and the strategies that you described, they are, let's say, mostly geared to your customers, obviously, organization recruiting talents, trying to grow their talent pool, attract and retain talents. How would you possibly apply those techniques and strategy for policymakers trying to develop a skill strategy at the national or subnational level? And how do you think these techniques or approaches can maybe change in the future, the art of policymaking in that area?
I think, thanks for the question. I think it's a very good question. How do we migrate from, business world and our customer to public or policymakers space? I think the one thing that I discovered is that when I was working in telecommunication or in healthcare, I was using models that I'm still using today. So it's really about just understanding the business need, but the methodology behind the scene could be adapted to policymakers. And the previous talk that I had on the supply and demand, I mentioned supply and demand equation quite a lot. Supply and demand is one example where this type of analytic and advanced analytic can really help government, state, and cities, and of course, organization, company, to drive policy to change. And we're already doing that, Master, in the U.S. with the federal government and also with the state of Ohio. That's we helping them with people analytics and to better manage their supply and demand. Ohio is one of the states in the U.S. where the unemployment rate is pretty low. They're doing pretty well. And they came to us, and we're helping them in that capacity where they engage with job seekers, but they also engage with employers. Because when you know the market pressure saying, we have a lot of organizations who are looking for engineer, and we don't have enough engineer in the population of Ohio. That's not the case. We're just making an example. But what the government will say, let's put in place some program to train or school that we open that will include as training computer science, engineering, and math. So that is how it's really building up. When we look at the federal government, the same thing. We want them to understand, what type of policy they put in place, the training of the employee, and also the federal government also operate as an organization, even if it's not a private organization. So they need to understand not only their people, but they need to understand the overall market, what is happening from the market. So we provide them with this type of data and this type of insight that they won't have access in real time as we do. We have that access to. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Australia.
Thank you very much for the presentation. That was fascinating. I had a question. It's probably going back more to the data source side of the question. So whether it's for people in analytics or business, do you see a role for an organisation like the OECD in making recommendations to governments about making access to data a priority, not just of government data? Because it's really a question about who owns the data and how readily you can access it to actually do all of this analytics. Yeah. Is there something that you're seeing? You hear reports about a backlash of consumers to having all this information readily accessible for these other sort of corroboration exercises that's going on. I guess two questions. Do you see a potential for a backlash for consumers to this privacy issue? And do you see a role for governments in actually making or compelling private parties to provide more information in open source format?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for those two questions. I think absolutely there's always a potential backslash, meaning to information, free access could be also backfire. But the way I look at it is really kind of a balance, because I'm going back to my daughter. She's 11-year-old, so she has access to internet, and I know that she can find, even if I have protection, she can find good things and bad things. But one of the things that I realized, she learned how to program in Python, she learned how to program in Scratch from the internet, leveraging open and free open source code. So I would say, yes, there's a backlash, or will be there, but when you look at the balance, I think we are more leaning to getting that open and getting access. For the second question, the role of the government, absolutely. I think when I refer to Obama campaign, and I was in San Francisco last week speaking at a conference, and his senior advisor was there, David Plouffe, and he was told something very interesting. He was speaking as well. He said back in 2012, after the first debate, Obama really didn't perform very well. So he had advice from Democrats, strategists. They had been there for a while. They say, oh no, Ohio is a good state for us. We'll stick with that. No worry. And they also have data scientist team who leverage, and they call that kids, young coming from school. They were crunching data, publicly available data, and to understand the trend and preferences, they said, oh, we are in big trouble. So David, then he said, I have this recommendation from the senior guys that have been there. They say, oh, no worry about Ohio, we fine. And then I have the data scientists leveraging big data saying, oh, we're in big trouble. We have to reshuffle the way we spend. And when he goes to the president and he spoke to him about that, this is what the senior guys are saying, this is what the data scientists are saying. And he replies, and I found that so funny, he said, I trust the kids. So I trust the kids. I mean, the kids, they have been learning from the data, from the ground, from real-time data, real-time feedback that people were providing. So to your second question, I really think that, yes, government will be involved. They have no choice. And if you look at, for instance, in the U.S., I mentioned Obama, they're leveraging publicly available big data to drive their strategy. And the Obama administration, they invest a lot in big data program to help better understand even the climate. They have NOAA that store a lot of data that they make available to the public sector. And one thing that David also mentioned, that public sector is leveraging that data now, for instance, insurance company, to drive data policies. And for government, if they have access to that data, historical data and live data, they can better protect the citizen, saying, next month or next year, this could happen. Let's put in place some contingency plan. You're welcome.
Czech Republic, please. Sorry, Hungary. Sorry.
Very good anticipation. I did not even raise my flag. I did not ask, but I certainly do have a question as a Czech Republic. Well, I'm a big friend of S-curves, and you showed the dramatic increase of the data collection. We call it big data, smart data, whatever. Can you agree with the future proposition that in some point of future, we will collect all the data we need. There will be no new data needed for our decision making, for our human beings' behavior and things like that. So, what that situation would mean in the future? Thank you.
Good. Thank you for the question. If I understood very well, will we reach to the point where we have all the data? No need to collect new data. The answer is no, because big data today won't be big data tomorrow. And why? Because we're creating every second new tools, new technology. We're having access to more and more data that human being, for now, we're just a portion of that. And if you go back before Facebook, Twitter, and all the social media, we used to have a big volume of data. And at that point, we would have said, oh, we have enough, because if you look at telecommunication, we can track where you're calling, who call you, or the call duration or transaction online. And then those guys, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and Pinterest, they came in where can put everything, video, text, and so forth. So my answer is not really. It will be evolving. And that question was asked to me, actually, they say, would that be a limit to the number of atoms we have? And I think not really, because, we, human beings, they're already finding new ways, and the ability to store has no limit. Just an example is Google now. Who will imagine that a company will take a picture of the entire world? If you go even in Africa or in India or in Paris, you put the address, they can show you the picture where you're going. And all that data, they're maintaining it. So if we have new tools, new product, 5 years from now, a new guy will come up with a new idea, and they will create a new data that we'll have to collect. So I don't think that we'll reach that point. We'll have a big majority, of the data, but it will still increase, because just the way human being has been evolving, industrial revolution, and now we are internet age, and big data is becoming quite obsolete. The new thing that is coming is IoT, Internet of Things, where everything will be interconnected. When you wake up in the morning, that data, we're not collecting it now. You have a sensor in the house that will detect that there's a motion, and then will send a command to your light to light up graciously, because you just wake up, doesn't want you to be surprised. And when you walk to your fridge, you want to open the fridge, it tells you what you have to eat. And then because you don't have enough milk, it sends a message to your store saying, oh, I'm ordering milk and I will be there in 5 minutes. And you go back, you brush your teeth, you're brushing your teeth, your mirror tells you that, oh, you have to pay attention to what you're eating because your weight is so full. All that data, we will be able to collect that. And we're talking about 200 billion, 20 billion as we speak today, sensor connected. In 2020 will be 50 billion connected objects. So as you can see, unfortunately, the answer is no. And it will be growing. We're not there yet, but we're getting there.
Hungary, please.
Thank you very much. I don't have this flag here, and thank you very much for the presentation. Actually, my son is a chief data scientist, and now I have learned that he has a better job than to be ambassador at the OECD, more sexiest it is. So I have 3 questions, and I am rather an old-fashioned economist. So what do you think the people analytic, which is lovely in that case, how influence the possibility to use people analytic to regulation, thank you very much, regulation of the labor market? Because as far as I see, you can use it if you have a flexible labor market regulation, otherwise not. I don't want to take the example of France in that case, when there is not possible to dismiss people on because of economic reason, how can you use this whole? So the question is how far a labor market regulation, the flexibility, influence the people analytics and what you can use it. My second question is also a little bit, when you just read a discussion here in France, they have such a phrase that digital dictatorship or something similar, yeah? That when you have this big data, they have also positive side and could be also negative side. You mentioned that fridge will send me a message or buy a milk, whatever I don't like, or give me my mirror the message I have to shave myself, but I don't want to. So that how far is this risk or not? How can we use in a very positive way? And my third question was a little bit what you mentioned, that previously the marketing campaign have been influenced by creativity, creative ideas, and today analytics. I'm not very happy with this development in every point, and I think creativity is crucially important. And in organization, it is good when you find and you can match the different positions to find a talent and so on. But creativity or creative talent is much more than for an organization. Creativity could be very useful and has more words than just to have. So my question is rather, how could you implement creativity in your model, or how can we find a creative people, which is a little bit difficult, I think.
Sure. Thank you for the questions, and I will try to recall all the questions. I am still in the jet lag. So I will start with the third one because the most recent, creativity. I think what I try to explain is that HR or human capital manager, they can follow the marketing pace, because marketing before, they were solely relying on creativity and on instinct, on gut feel. So what I'm saying here is not that we just give everything to analytics, but it's really combined. So we still need creative people. Even the definition of data scientists, I have an article in the Wall Street Journal where I say, what is a data scientist? And I said, someone who can get from the business question, get the data, all the data existing internally, externally, create value, communicate, and have also some creativity, because communication is also about creativity. Because if you don't have that, your message won't come across. It will be too technical. You have a lot of great technical people, great model, but they don't have what it takes. So to your third question, I would say we still need that. And in a winning team, like I don't know, somebody asked me the question in my previous talk about a multidisciplinary team where you have linguists, data scientists, and so forth. We need that. We need that to create best product. We need that to create best design. So my point here was more like the value added of analytics was shadow in the past, and now it's becoming limelight, and it's still really a combination. So the going back to the first question. That was about, I think, employment, how we leverage employment data and how we correlate all that. I think the good news about the digitalization is that we can keep track of a lot of information at a high level, medium level, very low level, micro data, and how it can help policymakers. I mean, you have, for instance, the unemployment rate. We, as a company, we collect all job posted online. So job posting means a company or an organization, OECD can say, I'm looking to hire 500 people in the next 2 or 3 months. So we have that future hiring need. And some of the model that I've built is to anticipate. First, see there's a correlation between my index and also anticipate what will be the market, the employment market, based upon the data that we have that looks ahead of the needs. The other question was about, I think, the positive and negative. You know, how do you get that balance? I'll go back again to really individual assessment or organization assessment. But a friend of mine told me something. He said, you know, if Obama is using big data, if in sport people are using big data, and if Google, that business is based upon big data, they're using people analytics, and company like JP Morgan Chase that I mentioned, 36 billion in litigation, and it's huge. They say we have to put people analytics in place. Instead of spending the money when it's too late detecting fraud, let's play the Mission Impossible. You recall that movie with Tom Cruise? Before the crime happened, you know, who will commit that crime, and let's do something. So for organization and policymakers, I think it's really important really to get that. If they can help like OECD, if they can help organization or countries saying, if you continue that path, this is what might happen, or this is what will happen. I think this is critical. They can adapt, they can change the way they're driving the country or the state. Good.
Greece. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I'll go back to my Czech colleagues' starting point, at any rate, the sigmoid curve. Now, for economists, this is perhaps the epitome of the law of diminishing return. See how something accelerates, then is momentarily constant, and then decelerates thereafter. Although it increases on and on, I mean, that doesn't stop, right? Now, I have no doubt that there is this, perhaps even accelerating for the time being, rate of production of data. The question is it worth the candle? I mean, I'll show you a datum. This is a datum, and this is the cancellation of this datum. So one datum killed another one. So data get generated simply by the passage of time, but there's a lot of culling at various stages. Now, think of the last example you gave, the preventive design, the design construction that prevents people being too tall, too short, too corrupt, etc. So there'll be thresholds and be all sorts of things. Now, what's the most successful organization historically, so far as we know, that has done this kind of design? I mean, one possible candidate could be the mafia, where there's a simple rule: you hire family. Punkt. No family, watch it. And call if, etc. Now, in the construction of the world as we go on from here, I say, not the royal we, the collective consciousness of, we're running out of something, and there is just a sniff of a stagnation hypothesis. And eminent economists are belaboring. I don't think they're hitting it yet, because it's a simple thing, but there will be lots and lots of little rivulets contributing to it. Now, might it be that the best use of everything wonderful you have to explain to us would be to go to stagnation, actually, to design, obviously not to stop people where they happen to be now, but to find a plateau where cohabitation is conceivable, because otherwise the way we're going, we're going to be a war. And it's not going to be like the old one. It's going to be a big one, right? So this really, it's an elementary question. How do you see the value of big data evolving? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question and the explanation. I think there are risks, of course. If we go back to the question and the point you mentioned about the mafia and all that, yes, there is a risk. There is a risk of false positive if we rely too much on big data. For instance, I would take an example of disease, or where because we leverage big data and people will say, oh, they're diagnosed of this cancer and let's go ahead and do what we have to do. Or even in policing, there are some states in the U.S. where because they have the data, they know that crime will be committed or something will happen, they start screening people based upon that. So that's kind of, I would say, the backslash or the negative impact of the big data. But I really think that the word big data and the marketing around it has been somehow create a huge confusion, because the way I say it is more about the value from the data and the incremental piece of data that you can get. Sometimes it's not even big data. It's just because you were able to add that incremental piece. But in general, we put that under a hat, big data. So the way I say it, now, yes, there is a risk. Like before, even the internet itself, going back to my first example, is a huge risk. It's open. People are finding how to make bombs, how to become radicalized. And at the same time, people are finding, like I wrote my books without going into any library. I found everything online. I mentioned my daughter. She found everything she's looking for online. She's learning online, open source. So I think, to your point, a stagnation point, I believe in human being enough being smart to kind of, find the right balance. I really think. Do I really have the final answer? No, but I really believe in that human being balance. It's like we'll have personal responsibility, and government will have that responsibility, because not all government are open to big data. Big data is not open everywhere. Like access to internet, access to Facebook, and so forth is not open everywhere. So I believe in that balance from leaders, from citizens, to make sure that we're using it in the good of human being, not to destroy the human being. Yeah.
Please, Portugal.
Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. I think there is a very recent episode in the House of Cards that they are using big data, but in that case not in a most innocent way. So there are risks here, as our Australian colleague was talking before. And I wanted to follow up a little bit on the Greek ambassador, because yesterday we had here a seminar on the digital revolution and the cloud and platform economy by Professor John Zisman from Berkeley. And it was very interesting for several reasons, but especially because he had more questions than answers to the risks and challenges raised by the digitalization of the economy. And in your presentation, you touched again an important issue that he spoke yesterday as well, that is the increasing efficiency on the matching between employers and employees and the labor and supply. But then we don't see in the productivity statistics this efficiency, this increase in efficiency, in economic efficiency. So I would like to hear, and you are in the business of the labor market, I would be interested in your views why there is so potential on these tools, and starting from big data, but this is about the digitalization of the economy. So what's your take about this apparent disconnect? Is this a marginal revolution or a radical revolution? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ambassador, for the questions. Is that marginal or radical revolution? I think I was just speaking with Eric about, the opportunity for organizations like OECD to maybe leverage this type of data. So why we're just seeing a portion of that is just the nature of human being, because people are still skeptical because they don't have a full understanding the pros and cons, what in it. They have the perception when we talk about big data is Big Brother watching out of, everything I'm doing. Or some people, big data is just like, I don't trust, it's messy, it's not reliable. Or statistician, Eric was relating to me, some feedback he got from some statistician that big data, no. But 18 months ago, they started like, okay, maybe something we can get. So revolution, radicalization, I think we will get there gradually, because it's really also based upon the mentality of people, the change management, the mindset of human beings. We all have our comfort zone, what we do, we know how to do it, we have control into that. And now this is something new, something that we have pros and cons, and we know bad things about, and some cases, we're just afraid that if you look at people, analytic or HR manager, like algorithm will take away everything. Human being will be useless, mostly in human capital. So that kind of fear is there. I think when we see leaders in politics showcasing that there is a value and factual value, when we see in sport, when we see business-wide, they have been there for a while because they have to make money. But when we see like for disease, medical research or healthcare, there are two areas where I really believe innovation is coming from the big data. It will be in HR, human capital management, and in healthcare. There's a lot to do there, and it's still at very infant stage. So from my point of view, I really believe that it will get there. It will be gradual, because if you go the other side of the Atlantic, we're pretty open with our data, and then you come here in Europe, it's a lot of protection. So the mentality are different, and company delivering those solutions, they have to adapt. But I really believe that it will be there. And just a personal example, I was here in 2013, I was speaking at Dauphine, and big data was just like, wow. And people were very, they're interested, but at the same time was like, oh, again, Big Brother. And I can tell you, I came back here in March speaking at the Big Data Conference, Palais de Congrès, full of people, full of startup, huge change. So I think it's just a matter of time. I might be wrong, but this is what I can say.
So more questions from the floor, please. Oh, sorry. You and then here.
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. So I'm from the Global Relations, and I'm here because I'm a huge enthusiast of big data, and especially how can we normal people, not data scientists, increase our efficiency and productivity in our work. And so I've came across some means of using big data, and for a normal person, not data scientist, the only thing I can use now is Google. And their algorithm is fascinating, but I think it's a bit outdated to the artificial intelligence that exists. For example, Watson, from IBM, it's a tool that can be used to search for queries, and it's better 10 times than Google. So my question is, as you know, the job from a data scientist, what tools are available now to us, except from Google, that we can use to access big data and that are related to artificial intelligence? Because Google search is just, it's really on the primary phases of artificial intelligence. So are there other tools, or we have to wait to other tools to come, like Watson coming to being available to everybody, or something else? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and I'm happy to see someone interested in data science and math and stats. So very hard to fill position, by the way. You won't have any issue finding job. I think what tools, the good news about the big data, and I mentioned my daughter again, like Python for kids. You can do a lot of big data with Python. So you need a Spark learn Spark, and all that is free. There are community, and something really about the internet and overall big data is, in Silicon Valley, there is a mentality where they say knowledge should be free, meaning the more we share the knowledge, the more we can address the most challenging problem of this world. So that's why you have open source people like some people programming R. They will write script, make it available to anyone, and nobody is allowed to sell it. I mentioned Python, R, Spark. So Python more importantly, because my data scientist is a fan of that. He doesn't want to buy anything. He programs everything in Python, so he don't ask him to pay for any software. So I think Python will be, very good, because the huge difference from traditional tools that we'll have is on unstructured data. How you can go scrap the internet, get everything that you find, whether it's picture, or video, or text, or chat, and classify that. So I would say, it could be a very good start. As far as the IBM Watson, it's a great tool, but they've been having challenges bringing it to the market. But it's wonderful. I mean, they're way ahead of time. Unfortunately, the go-to-market strategy has room for improvement. So this is what I will do. And it's funny because I have a contest with my daughter right now. I still program myself. I still learn to program. I've been told that if you're still learning, your brain won't, decrease functioning. So even in my role, I like, programming. I'm still building model, and Python is part of the, I program in R and SAS and all of things, but Python is one that's, I think, when I see what my data scientist is able to do, it's the way, it's a software I would recommend. Good.
Maybe, sorry, two last questions, Eric and yourself.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. I said this morning, but this afternoon is also fascinating. So the thing is, we know the one who own the data, so Google, the telecommunication companies, etc., just contact us now because they know that the OECD can create value on this data. In this supply and demand equation, how to attract, acquire, develop, retain talents. I asked this morning about the linguist, because I think that in the OECD we have mathematicians, modelers, statisticians. But which step the OECD should follow to plan workforce? Because can you illustrate with Google's? Because I know that our variant team was extremely small. How they are today? Did they ask them to contact OECD? Do they have much bigger workforce? And how government, international organization, OECD, and we can adapt, and which process should we build? Should we build a marketing workforce or reinforce our existing marketing workforce?
Good. So, and just in case I forgot, some questions, I just want to make sure that I address all those. So, from where you start, to build the people analytic or leverage your existing team, I really believe in, first and foremost, leveraging existing resources. That's, once again, that's important. If you have mathematicians, statisticians, and then you can even have a joint venture with your marketing team to get their way of thinking, going back to some ambassador mentioned marketing and creativities, to get that from them, because you need that again. And then you have your human resource people that also, even if they haven't been data-driven people, but you need them to understand that human behavior that so far an algorithm or machine cannot detect. And then we have linguists be able to understand the means, the context, the concept of word, to come together with algorithm that will be reliable. But this is really, I will say, the greatest solution to build that entire team. But it's oftentimes people will wait too long to have all pieces and then it's become a project that, oh, no way, we can't, the project, it's too bad, it's taking too long. I would say start with what you have, with first people with the data, knowledge, but also, more importantly, start with the business question. What are you trying to do? Because when you have that in mind, then you can find people and share that business question with them, saying, this is what I'm trying to do. So they will walk around that. Otherwise, they can come up like vendors with great things. This is what we do. This is how we address that. No, this is my business question. This is what we're trying to achieve. And when you have that, I think leveraging existing team and expanding to cross-functional team, whether it's marketing internally, and as I said this morning, you can even tap into maybe external organization that could be willing to share, to collaborate, or consultant who has a very noted experience into that. So this is really how I see that. So going back now to Google. Google, they have a team called People Analytics. It's the only organization that I know of where they have a dedicated team that the goal is to understand, apply big data to people, to their people, understanding what makes people at Google happy, why they are not happy. Understand, for instance, something that I don't know any organization that does that. Google managers is the only organization I know, maybe there are others, where managers are evaluated twice a year by their direct report. Can you imagine that? First, when we started that project, they were like, oh, my God, if I don't give a raise to my direct report, they will just, they will kill me. But they said, no, it's not about punishment. It's about making sure that everybody that wakes up every day to come here, they're happy. Because we hire all of you because you're smart people. We want to make sure that you're in an environment where your productivity, your skill, your creativity will have room to grow and room to be expressed. So this is really what's happening at Google. And they also find I think the leader into that, they said they addressed the diversity problem. They said their team was made up with the same guys, programmer, the same background, and so forth. They need more diverse team. They did study, analytic, they found that, and they even found that in more diverse team, they have more productivity, more creativity. So they're working on that. They look at that, the issue, and they're coming with some solution. And this is Google. Now, all organizations, are they doing that? Not really. It's because there is a lot, once again, the change management, the comfort zone, and the unconscious bias. Sometimes people are not even realizing that, what they're doing is wrong. They're keeping doing it. So, but I think gradually it will expand, and gradually we will see adoption. And I think for organizations like OECD, yeah, definitely, I think there's opportunity for you guys to leverage that piece of data for your model that are very reliable, very trusted, and better guide and make recommendation to some policymakers, I think, around the world. Because once again, the supply and demand equation, I think, is really what's drive the entire, I would say, project or goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we need to close the session. So maybe if there are more questions anyway, we're not done yet with you, Jean-Paul. Mm-hmm. We have a deep dive session for working on more detailed practical use cases. And so those of you who have registered or anyone who would be interested to continue the discussion, it will continue in Marshall Building, room 4022. Let me warmly thank you for the brilliant presentation and insights and interesting questions from the floor. And so let's continue our day with you.